Show is live from the Whiskey 61 Lounge in the Bank Plus studio.
Check it out.
Oh, good morning. Welcome in. Out of Bounds, brought to you by Mike Hike in Flowwood. Number one selection of pre-owned and new SUVs and trucks. Mac Hike in Flowwood, MacHikeFlowwood.com. We're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app, and this is ESPN 105.9 The Zone. I'm your host, Bo Bounds. We welcome in Tom Luginbill, National College Football Analyst with ESPN. Lugs joins us on the Corona Premier guest line. Tom Luginbill, on a Monday. What's happening, buddy?
How are you, pal? Everything good with you?
I'm good. I spent the weekend in Starkville. Baseball did not go well for either team, but I ate some great food, and we had some beers and bourbon. So all in all, it was a good – did y'all have good weather this weekend? Because we had great weather.
Yeah, pretty good. I had North Carolina spring game, so I drove up to Chapel Hill from Charlotte, and it was about 60 degrees, slightly overcast, but it was nice. It really was.
It's a beautiful area. Beautiful area.
Is. No doubt. Beautiful campus too, man. That job is that's a really, really nice spot, man.
Does Longo still have that haircut high and tight?
Heck yeah, man. You gotta respect a man that purposefully wears a 1960s, 70s crew cut. I mean, don't you love it?
Yes.
Come on, let's go.
Between he and Chiswick, there's some energy on that staff, huh?
Oh, yeah, man. Well, you know what's interesting? Like, we talked about this last week, I think. Like, you could tell because when I was talking to Chiswick and I asked him point blank, I was like, man, what's it like coaching knowing that you don't have to feed your kids? Like, there's no pressure. You're just out here because you just love it and you want to have a good time and you want to teach football and recruit, but, like, it's not life or death, you know? And so, yeah, they got a lot of good things going on there. They got to get back on track. I think they got a little over their skis a year ago. Too much hype, too much off-season banter. Kids didn't handle it well. And, you know, it's kind of part of that, taking that next step, right? When you have an off-season where everybody's telling you how good you're supposed to be, and then you end up reading all of it, believing all of it, and now your focus and your preparation wanes, and you don't play very good. And that's exactly what happened to them.
And it can happen in a heartbeat. And
no doubt.
And, you know, there's not really any programs that are immune to that except maybe Bama, which is pretty incredible considering. And look, Kirby Smart has to do this now, Tom, for the first time in his career, and the first time Georgia's won the, you know, title in the modern era. 1980 was a long, long time ago. So, you know, we had a team in this state that won the national championship last year in baseball at MSU, and they're having a rough go of it this year. And you know this. It is hard to continue to sharpen the sword when everybody in town is patting you on the back and wants to buy you a beer.
It's a whole different ball game when you go from being the hunter to the hunted, right? You're climbing the ladder, you're scrapping and scraping. Everybody's saying, oh, you can't get there, so you're motivated, or you're not going to knock off Alabama, so you're motivated. Now all of a sudden you've done it. How do you sustain it? Yeah, that's where and I think I've shared this with you before, that's where I think Nick Saban is actually undervalued. You know, everybody thinks it's about the process, and everybody thinks it's about recruiting and player evaluation, and you know, Alabama has resources, and I get all that, and all of that is true. But what he's done maybe better than anybody else is he gets kids to play to their own standard and rise to the occasion when everybody's trying to bring them down through telling them how good they are, right? Because how do you not believe it? How do you walk around campus, walk into a mall, walk into a restaurant where everybody's patting you on the back? How do you not fall victim to that? And somehow, some way, Nick Saban is able to manage that. And that's now, I think, Kirby Smart's, you know, next challenge. Now, he's seen how it's done because he's been a part of it at Alabama, but now he has to do it as the head man with his own program.
Ooh, all right. We'll see how that all right, real quick. Who would be your favorite, Bama or Georgia, in the SEC going into
I think it would be Alabama this particular year. just because there are more returning components and they're more dynamic at quarterback. You don't lose the guys that Georgia has lost off of that defense and have some type of, I don't want to say setback, but some type of maybe growing pains, right? I mean, that is a generational front seven. For me, this is just me. I think Travon Walker is the best player in the entire draft. I don't think it's Kayvon Thibodeau. I don't think that it's Aiden Hutchinson. I don't think it's a quarterback. I think that dude is the best player, top to bottom in the entire draft. Like if I was Jacksonville, obviously there's a massive needed offensive tackle. But if they decided not to go that way, I would take Travon Walker over Thibodeau and Hutchinson.
Okay. I like it. Tom Luginbill on the Corona Premier guest line. Well, let's stay in the SEC. Kiffin and Jimbo do not agree on much, and I really don't think they like each other, which we need more of. Now, I don't know how deep it is, but we're going to play it up a little bit. Now, this article that y'all dropped on ESPN.com on analytics last week or the week before was unreal. Very well done.
Did Bill Connolly drop it?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
That's his wheelhouse, man.
So I want to walk you you already know this, but Jimbo Fisher and Lane Kiffin are polar opposites in coaching. Lane is all about the analytics, all about going for it on fourth down, and Jimbo had the fewest fourth down attempts in the country last year. So the way I see this is Jimbo is recruiting gangbusters and doing a great job in that space. As far as coaching, I think he coaches like it's 2001. Kiffin's quote in here is that, hey, when you're playing A&M and it's 4th and 1, no matter where the ball is, we're just sending out our punt return team. They're going to punt. That's Jimbo. I think he's even quoted as saying that.
Right.
Kiffin goes on to say the game's not – Jimbo says this, but this is from Kiffin. The game's not played in a book. I'm not looking at a stupid book. So my takeaway from this article is Kiffin is all in on analytics and all in on the transfer portal. Jimbo is all in pretty much on high school players and all in on coaching like it's 2001. I think Kiffin can close the gap as far as talent on the field with his approach. Your thoughts?
Yeah, listen, I think that the whole analytics thing, and I saw a little bit of this last fall, is you can't ignore the instincts that go with making snap decisions. Yes, we can say, okay, well, if we've got the ball on offense and it's 4th and less than 4 and we are plus 42 going in, we're in 4-down territory. Okay, that's fine. I get that. That's what the book says, and you're going to do that. But you can't just dismiss your instincts. You can't just dismiss what else is going on in the arena, where you're at on defense. Did you just have a devastating injury? Did you just give up a big play? Did something else happen that needs to be considered in that whole analytics equation? And I think we saw a little bit of that. I know I did in some of my broadcasts where it was like it was too analytical. You know, it was too by the book. And instead of sitting back and saying, I don't like this right now, and just trusting your instincts as a coach, right? And the more coaches I've talked to about it, yes, analytics has become a big deal. The percentages side of the game has become a big deal. And the one, 4-down territory thing that I just mentioned, I think you're actually going to see more and more and more of that as the percentages bore out, that you actually have a better chance of continuing your drive by giving yourself an extra down.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And so, but I still think instincts have to play a role. And that's where I would say maybe Jimbo, to some degree, is a little bit more instinctive in the sense that, and you know what, maybe I'm using the term instinctive, and sometimes that can mirror the term traditional. All right. Well, maybe he's a little bit more traditional in his thinking. He knows that they're going to have elite players on defense. He knows that they're going to be able to run the ball. So maybe in his mind is, listen, if it's going to be difficult for people to score on us, then we need to minimize our risks in other areas. Whereas if you're not very good on defense, now you're just going to say, well, the hell with it. we're gonna take every advantage, every analytic, and every percentage that tells us we might have an opportunity to score more points because we're gonna have to have a chance to win the game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily disagree with some of the ways Jimbo goes about it, and I don't disagree with being all in on analytics. But I think even if you talk to Lane Kiffin, he would tell you that on that sideline, regardless of what the book says, you do have to have some awareness of what else is going on around in the game.
Yeah. Ooh, fewest in the nation? Yikes. I just think I just think he's borderline bad as an offensive coach at this point.
Well, listen, I'm going to say let's be very, very blunt and very, very honest here. We all know how the previous regime went down in flames at Texas A&M, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Kevin Sumlin, what he inherited was great, but then they recruited some good players, didn't have a lot of results. If you look at the results during Kevin Sumlin's phase and now to this point under Jimbo Fisher, they're not too dissimilar. They're actually almost dead identical.
Yes.
So,
They're both 34 and 14 after 4 years, Luke.
Yeah. So to your point, you know, at the recruiting side of it, and I said this post-signing day this year, and everybody was giving me flack over it because they want me to say, oh, it's the best recruiting class ever. Okay, fine, maybe it is. But we've seen them have top 5 classes. We've seen them have top 10 classes. We keep seeing 8 and 4.
Right.
So I'm going to withhold my judgment on whether this is the best recruiting class of all time until I see that recruiting class go out and beat Georgia, and then go out and beat Alabama, and then go out and beat LSU and get to Atlanta and win the SEC. Because at the end of the day, that's how those recruiting classes are going to be judged.
Kiffin and Jimbo, they had their game canceled 2 years ago in College Station. So Kiffin has yet to go out there. He will go out there this year in November. And, we'll see what plays out with Jackson Dart, Michael Trigg, and all this stuff, and the transfer. But, look, here's what I like about Kiffin is he's not backing down at all on the two things he's doing, and that is analytics, and he's all in the transfer portal. I mean, he's basically saying, and I know you can't keep up with everything, but we kind of lock in. Even in his press conferences this spring, Lugs, he's like, I'm all in, and we are going to continue to do this. And really the question will be, because he will be a great case study, is how much is too much, or is there – maybe it's not. And he's been saying, look, when we get these kids, they burn their transfer, so they can't leave us. We don't have to deal with that. Right. And this is the way we're going to do it. I guess Lane knows that for the most part, they're not going to finish in the top 5 in recruiting. So his theory is if we can finish around 20, and then I can move that number up with 10, 12, 13-plus transfers, this is how I'm going to roll. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that that's probably a valid line of thinking in his approach. And listen, with all of the positives, and there are positives to the transfer portal, especially for programs more like an Ole Miss than an Alabama, Georgia, or a Texas A&M or a Clemson, because I've said this to you before too, is like when people push back on Dabo or somebody else and they're not taking a bunch of transfer portal guys, well, the point of the transfer portal is to get your roster better, to improve your depth. Well, how many guys are in the transfer portal are better than what Alabama's playing with? Not many, right? We actually saw that with Alabama last year with Jameson Williams,
right. But
it's not 10. So why would they waste their time in the transfer portal when they can build long-term depth at the high school level with every elite player in the country? But if you are an Ole Miss, you're now going to sit there and say, okay, the upside is, to your point, we can get a little bit more experience, a little bit older. Now, the only downside on this line of thinking, and I don't think it's a downside because I don't think he'll do it, you can't do the transfer portal thing with a bunch of one-and-done guys. That is not going to help you, because you will not be able to sustain long-term depth. You will not be able to build a roster, and it will kill you in high school recruiting because every kid will shy away thinking that they're going to be replaced by a one-and-done guy. So you got to be careful there. Where I think that Ole Miss will focus, and other teams too, are guys that have 3 years of eligibility remaining. You have to have some type of feel that you're going to have somebody for a minimum of 2. If he doesn't leave early, you get him for 3, and he improves your roster, he improves your depth. He adds, to your point, to your high school. all right, recruitment. But you can't do this with one and dones. And I would even shy away in many instances on guys that have just two, unless they are so vastly better than what you have. I mean, I think you have to be convinced as a staff that this guy's going to come in, he's going to start from day one. He's just flat out better than what we have. So, there's upside and downside to this equation. I don't think anybody truly knows how it's all going to play out in the end. Because remember, the one little sidebar in all of this that everybody forgets about is that extra year of eligibility. When we had the extra year of eligibility due to COVID, and they didn't just give it to the person that was in their last year of eligibility, but instead gave it to everybody, that created the biggest mathematical you-know-what storm maybe in the history of college football, because you don't know who's going out the door, who's coming in, exactly how much room you have. You don't know when guys are deciding to come back and decide, hey, I'm going to play here again. Well, actually, we need you to move on. So all of that is being massaged on a year-round basis without having a hard cap scholarship number. Well, guess who loses? The high school player. So if this transfer portal thing was just the transfer portal and we were under normal eligibility restrictions, this would be a much, much cleaner process, and we'd see much faster results, to your words, on, like, let's just say the experiment that Ole Miss is attempting right now. But because of the eligibility situation, the thing's going to drag on for another 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, and I guess it'll start shaking out a little bit after this year, right? As far as the extra COVID.
Potentially, but keep in mind, they gave it to freshmen 2 years ago. Well, now they're still going to have 3 more years of that. And if Wake redshirted, you still get an extra year. So now it's 6.
Yeah.
And you got guys who you think are seniors, but they're actually juniors. You have guys you think are juniors, but they're actually sophomores. And now you're saying, well, wait a minute. Has that guy been here 3 years? Could he leave early if he wanted to? And then you're like, well, wait a minute. No, he's still just a sophomore. The whole entire thing, and you still have to have your hard cap number. The NCAA wants everybody to get down to 85 scholarship. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible.
Was that a knee-jerk reaction now that we can look in the rearview mirror? I guess it's...
Well, it shouldn't have been. Anybody with half a brain could have seen what was going to come by making this decision, but that's not how the NCAA thinks.
That's true.
You're sitting here going, all right, hold on a second. If somebody in the room would have just said, let's tap the brakes and ask this question: what are we going to ask these universities to do if we're going to give everybody a year of extra eligibility? We're going to allow everybody to transfer without penalty, but we're going to ask them to get back to 85 within a calendar year. Nobody in the room said, how is it that they are supposed to do this?
Right.
I know that is because everybody I've talked to at the collegiate level is asking wants an answer to it.
All right, so I want to get to Leach and Will Rogers before we let you go. I just think Lane is running circles around Jimbo, except, the one Jimbo gets a little bit of a pass because he's recruiting so well. But I think Lane is the future and and I think Jimbo's still coaching like 20 years, like they did in 2003 at LSU when you could get away with that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Mike Leach, he's going into year 4, and he's now got Will Rogers, who's played a ton of football.
Yeah.
How do you see this? Will is a good player. He's not physically imposing, but he had to play too early. That's not his fault. But he's played, if you want to run all the numbers, he played pretty darn well considering how he was thrown into the fire. What do you see for 2022 with Leach and Will Rogers now that they've been together for a while and Will's got a lot of experience, Tom?
So I think that, number one, he really made a leap in 2021. I think he kind of took the next step. And I think part of that next step is gaining the belief and the confidence of your teammates. I think you put it perfectly. Played too early, probably wasn't ready. got thrown to the fire, took his lumps. The team did too. And then all of a sudden, that stuff starts to pay off, right? And just leave it to Mike Leach to look at this and say, hey, we're going to take it on the chin right now, but trust me, 15 months from now, this is all going to pan out. This is all going to be something that is going to work in our favor. And he was right. I mean, he completed almost 74% of his passes. What did he throw? 35, 36 touchdowns. To me, the guy has done exactly what every player that has played in that scheme under Mike Leach has done. Because you brought up something that gets glossed over. You said, well, he's not overly physically imposing. He's not going to just wow you with physical attributes. When you look at Mike Leach and the quarterbacks that have played for him, name one that has.
You can't.
It's hard. You can't do it. Like, you look at all of them. Sonny Cumbie, Graham Harrell, all right, Luke Falk, who might have been the most physically talented of the ones he's had. You can just run down the list.
Minshew.
Cliff Kingsbury, Minshew, all of them. Like, they all just – but at the same time, it's also another one of those scenarios where you sit there and you say, okay, heavy system offense, great for the collegiate game. There's basically been one player that has come from that scheme, that true air raid scheme, that has succeeded in the NFL, and that's Patrick Mahomes.
Yes.
Every single other one. You could maybe say Jared Goff because he played in a version of it under Tony Franklin at Cal.
And Minshew can make a lot of money as a spot starter backup for the next 10 to 12 years. Which, hey, that's still awesome. So
we'll all take that job.
Yeah.
But I think that that's the thing is it's a college offense with great results in the passing game. Obviously, we talked about it before, struggles in the run game. But they're going to move the ball on people. And I'll tell you one thing, don't play man-to-man defense against them.
No.
That's what LSU learned. That's what LSU learned.
Derek Mason, 2
years ago. Oh, yeah, exactly. If you're gonna do that, you're gonna get eaten alive.
I'm not sure what Elko was doing in the second half at A&M too. Those were 2 huge road wins for Will and that team. Okay, I've got a quick joke for you, somewhat of a joke. Brian Harsin in the spring game over the weekend. One of the Auburn offenses drives down to the 3-yard line and they kick a field goal. I mean, and so we've got Auburn fans on our text line wanting to ask you about it. Look, this is such a train wreck, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. He's not going to make it. I figure they'll relieve him of his duties by about game 9 or 10 this year, fair or unfair. But dude, spring game, you know this. You just called one. They're challenging enough to get excited about. You got to go for it, Luke, when you're on the 3-yard line in a spring game, don't you?
Yeah, and I wasn't there in all fairness, but yes, you would imagine. So in most spring games, to be honest with you, don't have the kicking game.
Right. I mean, good grief. All right. Have a good week, buddy.
All right, man.
Tom Luginbill, National College Football Analyst with ESPN on the Corona Premier Guest Line. How about that? Brian Harsin kicks a field goal on the 3-yard line. Boy, that gets me excited about Auburn football this year. Who they play to get things started? Mercer. That's where I want to be the first weekend of the season in 120-degree weather. Auburn against Mercer. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. Bank Plus. It's more than a name. It's a promise.